Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gapester here. This is the raid guide for Normal and Heroic Operator Thogar, the train boss. And this fight is pretty fun. Mechanically not too complicated, but it's mostly about the environment and it's unique, that's for sure. So let's get started. Now it's barely worth mentioning raid composition because it just does not matter on this fight at all. You just need 2 tanks and whatever appropriate number of healers. Healing requirement on this fight is very low, especially if people are avoiding the mechanics that they can. So just bring whatever you've got and you'll be fine. So before we get into the gimmicks of this fight, talk about trains and all that, let's just go over to the basic boss mechanics that Thogar will be doing throughout the entire encounter. So first is Enkindle, which is on the current tank at the time. This is your primary tank swap mechanic. It will apply fire damage initially as well as a stacking fire dot, and also increase future Enkindle damage for every stack. So, simplest thing to do is to have your tank swap every 2 stacks of Enkindle throughout the fight. And that's pretty much it, nothing special. The second primary ability from Thogar is Pulse Grenade, and like so many mechanics that we're seeing this expansion, this targets range members only. And this will throw a grenade at their location, and this grenade does damage if you stand in it, of course, and will also pull you toward it, the center of it. So if you find yourself in a grenade, just use a movement boost or teleport or whatever to get out of it. The general rule of thumb for this fight, like many others, is your range players should spread out and try to stay away from the melee clump. So ideally they want to stay toward the doorways where the trains enter and exit the room. And that way, if a grenade spawns on them, it's out of position and it doesn't really matter. This also will help with mechanics that we'll talk about in a little bit. The final ability from the boss is Berated. And every few seconds, he will essentially shout and buff all the current adds that are active. And this will stack up. So it increases their damage and attack speed and all that good stuff. So, basic thing to do is throughout the fight, you're going to be dealing with mostly adds and just the boss between those periods. So general rule of thumb is always kill the adds first, prioritizing them as necessary, but making sure that they are killed before you go back to the boss. And this will reduce the damage boost that is gained from this Berated shout. Alright, enough of that crap. Let's get on to the fun stuff. Trains! Obviously, this entire fight is about the train gimmick, and you're along 4 tracks here. And throughout the encounter, trains will be entering the room from various directions, and sometimes the trains will pass through completely, doing heavy damage to anyone that they touch, and sometimes they will stop and unload a series of adds that will try to kill you and all that good stuff. So the most frequent type is by far the type of train that just goes through. If you get hit by that, and it has a pretty, big attack radius, essentially, as far as how wide it is, you'll take about 400,000 fire damage. So perhaps it won't kill you if you have a cooldown, but it's pretty deadly, so try to avoid that. The other types of spawns, or trains rather, have smaller sets of adds, or some small adds plus a big add, or a large cannon where the siege gunner is, and we'll talk about what these adds do in a second. So I'm sure that some people are getting ready to type out in their comments, what's that add-on? So I'm just going to talk about it here because it's extremely helpful. I would call it mandatory really for everyone in the raid. It's just going to be so much more difficult without this add-on. There are really 2 add-ons that you can use for this fight. This is by far the superior one. The link to it is in the description, but it's called Thogar Assist. And as you can see, it just basically shows you the 4 tracks, and it will indicate where trains are coming into the room, as well as your current position relative to that train, and kind of indicate where you need to be, or where you are safe, where you're not, all that good stuff. It will even tell you what type of train is coming in, so that you can see, all right, this one's just going through, or this one's going to, unleash a bunch of adds, or whatever it is. So, extremely useful add-on, And like I said, I think it's pretty much a requirement for everyone in the raid to get it. I would also highly recommend that you open up the configuration once you install it. In addition to making it the size you want, which you can do on the main screen, but you can also change the settings for how it looks. But the important one is the time of warning that you're giving yourself before the train comes out. I think the default is 5 seconds, and it can go up to 10. And setting it higher is generally going to be easier for you because you just have more time to notice that the icons have changed and that you need to move to a new position and all that good stuff. So really useful add-on, highly recommend it. Now, because of the existence of these add-ons, I don't really have to go into the details of when trains spawn and where they spawn and all that good stuff. Just let the add-on do that. Like I said, you'll be able to see what is happening at what time. But I will talk about what the adds actually do and how you have to handle them. So there are, as you can see, about 5 different add types. The basic ones are the Iron Raiders and Iron Crackshots, which will spawn in huge groups like you see here. These just should all be picked up and tanked. They primarily do attacks on the tanks, but they will also throw grenades at random people. So as general rule of thumb goes, everyone should be spread out, and this will mitigate the damage from them. Otherwise, just cleave them down very quickly, and that's pretty much it. The Gromkar Firemenders are a little bit more important. These will attempt to cast a Cauterizing Bolt, which is sort of a heal effect that can be interrupted or possibly purged if it lands. But the basic idea is just to prevent them from doing that. And you can use interrupts or stuns or anything like that. Probably the most important mobs are the Gromkar Man-at-Arms, which again needs to be tanked. It has some pretty heavy damage on the tanks, but more importantly, it will chain cast Iron Bellow fairly frequently, which hits the entire raid group. And this damage can get quite high, particularly if the Man-at-Arms is alive for a long time and is allowed to get a lot of berated stacks from the boss. So, again, rule of thumb is kill the adds quickly when they appear so that you don't have to deal with the extra damage that they'll do. And then finally we have the Gunnery Sergeants. And these guys, instead of jumping off the train, will just hang up top and fire their gun at you because they're scaredy cats, I guess. What they will do is select a random range player, and for a few seconds after selecting that person, they will throw siege bombs at their location. So, as mentioned many times before, your range should try to stay spread out toward the doors. That way, if they get targeted by an ability like this, they can just run along that door wall and not drop bombs on top of the raid group. When bombs land, they have a very long activation time of, I think, 30 seconds, after which point they'll explode, of course, and do damage to anyone nearby. In the chaos, especially when you're first learning this, it's likely that people that are targeted will probably have to spawn bombs near melee. So just be aware of that. Like there you can see a billion of them. And just communicate with the raid, make sure, the melee and the tanks move out of it if necessary and all that good stuff. They have, like I said, a really long activation time, so you have plenty of time to react to them. So the last thing to discuss is the split phases. So for the majority of the fight, the raid as a whole will be able to stay together and always move onto the same track, essentially, to be safe and deal with the adds and heal everybody and all that good stuff. But at 2 distinct times in the fight, the raid will be forced to split up because trains will be in the center 2 tracks and adds will spawn on the outsides. And if there aren't raid members to deal with one of the set of adds, the train will stay there permanently and you'll basically trap yourself. They'll also, I believe they'll just stand there and shoot you and stuff. So anyway, before you actually pull, you want to split up the raid into roughly equivalent groups. If you have to have a little bit more healing on one side or the other, make sure you assign that extra healing to the side that the boss tank is going to be on at the time, if you can plan ahead that much. But otherwise, just make them pretty even groups, and that way the DPS will be equivalent. The timings for these split phases are pretty precise. About 2:10 into the fight is the first time, and then once again around 6 minutes and 20 seconds the second time. So you may see in the bottom right, I just started an in-game timer at the start of the fight so that I could just keep track of when these were going to happen and you know, help call that out. So other than that, once people are split up, of course, make sure everyone's aware which position they need to move to when the split occurs so that you don't have, you know, a major lopside in where the raid is. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Like I said, overall, it's a pretty simple fight. There's not a whole lot going on. It just feels more chaotic when you're trying to get used to the train mechanics, but making good use of the add-on will, you know, save you tons of time in this fight and let you get through it quite quickly. So that is the raid guide for Normal and Heroic Operator Thogar. As always, good luck, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Subscribe train coming through, woo woo!